Hello and welcome to Lamplighter. Today is day 2 of our daily Bible reading, January 2nd. Today, as we continue to read in the Old Testament story, at the very beginning of the story, we find specifics about Adam and Eve after they are banished from the Garden of Eden because of their sin. Now Adam and Eve, we are told, begin their family, and they give birth to a couple of sons by the name of Cain and Abel. We are told that Cain and Abel are different kinds of workers. Cain works in the field and works the ground. Abel has a flock and is a shepherd. These two boys decide that it's time to offer a sacrifice to God. Now, how do they know that it's time to offer a sacrifice to God? The Bible doesn't really speak to that question. We don't know if God has possibly given some instruction about offering sacrifices. We don't know if God has given some instruction about what kinds of sacrifices to offer, but it has always been a puzzle as to why Cain's sacrifice is not pleasing to God, while Abel's sacrifice is pleasing to God. What is the difference? Well, the text does tell us that Cain offers fruit of the ground from his own labor, and Abel offers some of his flock. Is it because Abel offers an animal sacrifice, as some would argue? Is it because Abel would offer a blood sacrifice, as others might argue? We don't have any indication if that is what God has required in sacrifices at this point or not. But apparently God has given some instruction that he desires a sacrifice to be built and to be offered. The only indication we really have when you read the text carefully is that Cain brings some of the fruit of the crops that he has tilled in the ground, while Abel brings not just some of his flock, but the fat portions of the best of his flock. We know from later readings that God is always going to demand the first and the best when sacrifices are offered. And so this gives us a pretty good indication as to why God is pleased with Abel's sacrifice, but not pleased with Cain's. Cain is so angry that God is not pleased with his sacrifice and so jealous of his brother being pleasing to God that he kills Abel, and we have the first murder in history. Abel is buried by Cain. His blood, as God indicates, is crying out to God from the ground. When God asks Cain about it, Cain says, "I don't know where he is. Am I my brother's keeper?" And of course, God knows the truth. As a result, God punishes Cain by banishing him from the land and making him sort of a nomad or a wanderer. But Cain says something very interesting when God puts this punishment upon him. He begins to talk about how his punishment is greater than he can bear, but while saying that, he says something fascinating. If you look at the top of page 8, he says, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence." It seems that Cain is upset not so much because he's being banished from the land, but he feels he's being banished from God's presence. When God responds to him, he responds in mercy. This shouldn't surprise us. God responds in mercy by saying, "I am going to protect you, and my presence will not leave you." What an awesome promise that is from God at the very beginning of creation. Remember, the story is about God. And what do we learn about God from this text? That God promises even when sin exists, that he will be present and that he will protect his people. It is still God's desire to always have fellowship with his people. He wants to fellowship with you, and he wants to fellowship with me today. Sometimes we violate God's commands. Sometimes we sin, for we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But isn't it good to know that we serve a God who, though he punishes us for our sin, always seeks to protect us, always seeks to guide us with his presence, and always gives us a place where we can come home. As we read further in the reading today, we saw the first listing of the genealogies. Now, sometimes we get a little bogged down reading names such as this, but there are some fascinating little nuggets in there. One of my favorites is the character Enoch that's listed. Enoch is one who never died, apparently, but he lived and walked with God, we're told. We don't know much about him, except that he was somehow translated from earth to God's presence. That's the kind of life, that's the kind of example we all long for. Let's walk with God. Let's long for the day when we can leave this earth and be forever with God. I hope you're enjoying being a lamplighter and reading the words of God's Word each day. And I hope you look forward, as I do, to more and more readings yet to come. Thank you for reading. Thank you for being with me today, and have a blessed day.